Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm Terry O'Henlin, Chief Marketing Officer for Gray Orange, and thanks for joining us to explore end-to-end fulfillment, modern strategies for a new era. There's no doubt that none of us saw the COVID-19 curveball coming. Faster than we might have thought possible, our world has been turned upside down, and we're all thinking differently about a lot of things, including our supply chains and our fulfillment strategies. One thing is clear: to survive COVID-20 or whatever new curveball is thrown our way, we've got to prioritize fulfillment strategies to favor adaptability, scalability, modularity, and even portability. Offering their insights today are Erin Lambe of Gray Orange, Sandy Stevens of Johnson Stevens Consulting, and Mark Santos of High Tech Material Handling. I'll introduce each briefly and then we'll get started. Gray Orange modernizes order fulfillment through a fulfillment operating system that combines artificial intelligence-driven software and smart mobile robots that are built together so they make each other smarter as they optimize and execute fulfillment activities to create the highest yield. Erin Lambe works closely with the Gray Orange Partner Network, collaborating to optimize fulfillment across in-store, e-commerce, and omni-channel challenges for a variety of companies. Erin's experience also includes working with large-scale project integrator Vanderland, as well as with Interroll, the leading global provider of material handling solutions. High Tech is the premier turnkey provider of material handling and integrated system solutions across an extensive range of industries. Driven by quality, innovation, and solid long-term relationships with leading manufacturers, High Tech creates a working partnership with customers, collaborating from start to finish on projects of all complexities. Mark Santos is a High Tech Vice President with more than 20 years of experience in system design and engineering, project management, business development, and relationship management. He leads High Tech's initiative to use autonomous mobile robots in the MHE system solutions space. As a division of High Tech, Johnson Stevens Consulting has crafted supply chain solutions for more than 200 retailers, wholesalers, e-commerce companies, 3PLs, and consumer product distributors. Areas of expertise include logistics network optimization, facility planning and design, WMS, TMS, and LMS services, labor management, engineering, lean distribution, and operations excellence. Executive Vice President and co-founder Sandy Stevens has more than 25 years of experience in distribution and operations consulting, operations management, and production planning. So we've got a good group of people here to discuss today's topic. Before I turn things over to Erin, I'd like to note that your microphones are muted. So anytime you can submit a question by using the chat function, and then we'll answer these at the end of the session. If we happen to run out of time before getting to everyone's questions, we'll distribute a Q&A document with today's presentation in our follow-up email. So please do submit any questions that you have because we will answer them. And with that, I'll turn things over to Erin.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate it. We've been focusing a lot on what changes for the customer. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is basically how our businesses are changing, and wanted to bring our partners High Tech into the conversation. So traditionally, when you work with a customer and you have this kind of long lead of design and analysis, you go out and do this design study with the customer, you can monitor them on site, then they go through potentially an RFP process, and that takes multiple months. And then after making their selection based on their RFP, they then have to go do a little bit more engineering and tweaking, and then there's the project delivery scope, which, depending on the technologies you're bringing forward, can go up to anywhere over 24 months. And so we were thinking together about how this new world will not allow for that old dynamic. This is no longer something that customers are willing to bear because it just doesn't react fast enough. And so the new normal for us is, how do we take all of those processes that we would typically do for design and build, RFP, and project delivery, condense them down so that our customers can react much faster, and therefore we need to react much faster. So Mark, basically wanted to hear from you. You've getting a lot of feedback from your clients and customers that you've been working with, and folks that are new to you as well. What are some of the things that they're encountering, and how are you able to kind of adapt to those?
Yeah, it's funny, Aaron. In spite of the high unemployment with the COVID epidemic right now, businesses are still struggling trying to attract and retain good people for their facilities. And then when you add to that the risk involved if they have just one person test positive on the floor and the impact that could have on the business, we're finding that that's driving more and more interest in them investigating opportunities to further automate their process so they're less dependent on some of those items that could upset the apple cart, so to speak.
Yeah. Sandy, I know that especially coming from the consulting world, that you are getting a lot of feedback from the market about what's changing for people, what their buying habits are, not only from their consumers, but from the folks that you guys do consulting work with. What are some of the things that you're getting back from the market?
Yeah, indeed, Aaron. This is not the same era in which 2020 began. You know, today's trade journals are filled with commentary regarding e-commerce and the effects of pandemic. You know, the first effect is very positive. Overall digital sales have increased over 30%. You know, some categories are increasing over 200%, and the sellers are challenged with that. So e-commerce has now exceeded 2019's projected 5-year growth plans. That can be exciting, or that can be daunting. What consumers buy in the digital marketplace and what portion is purchased in the digital marketplace likely have changed forever. So, you know, due to store closings and reduced in-store traffic, the business case for e-commerce has never been stronger. So e-commerce is now known to be essential to keep sales from dropping to zero again, as happened early in the pandemic. And retailers with a focus online have fared much better than others during this pandemic. Yeah, I like to quote Gartner analyst Sandy Shin, who says, "This is a wake-up call for organizations that have placed too much focus on daily operational needs at the expense of investing in digital business and long-term resilience. Businesses that can shift technology investments to digital platforms will mitigate the impact of the outbreak and keep their companies running smoothly now and over the long term." So as we move forward, the challenges of lockdowns and labor issues, instantaneous growth, intensified safety requirements have likely changed fulfillment centers and supply chains forever. So as a matter of fact, as we look forward, we have to take one of two perspectives. 85% of CFOs, surveyed by Gartner, expect a negative long-term results from this pandemic. CFOs are known for being somewhat skeptical. So clearly, the future success of any organization requires reinvention, and reconfiguration of supply chains and fulfillment centers is part of that reinvention. This pandemic began as an event, but is now a fast-moving paradigm shift with unprecedented uncertainty and opportunity. So as your slide indicated earlier, the new normal will not replicate the past. Everyone must be prepared for another unpredictable disruption, and sellers must quickly change to meet increased fulfillment demand, and at the same time, establish that resilience to avoid another shutdown of sales and revenue. Which, where each of us finds ourselves in the new normal now depends upon the actions that we take now. Perhaps the speed with which we take action now may well determine our place in the new normal. And that's why at HighTech we have introduced eComplete. eComplete is a comprehensive, fast-track solution to provide sellers with needed capability to meet exploding e-commerce demand. eComplete fills every gap to put sellers in the digital marketplace or grow their presence in the digital marketplace by way of a pre-engineered modular solution set that can be implemented in 3 to 6 months. That's the exciting part. The key to success is this modular, simplified approach, using our pre-engineered solution set to provide a flexible yet comprehensive system. The size of an eComplete system can vary from 2,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet and be expanded over time. eComplete is a versatile solution designed to serve most direct sales channels and verticals: retail, wholesale, 3PL, micro fulfillment, Even cannabis and others will find immediate benefits from this solution. While the modules are pre-engineered, each customer site's configuration will be customized to the needs of that shipper or that customer. So the fast implementation is possible due to our standardized process. Each system begins with a quick questionnaire to provide the data needed to quickly configure each site within just a few days of the response from the questionnaire. Integration and readiness are provided to get the system operating as fast as possible. Those are part of our consulting services. The eComplete team has SOPs, signage, staffing plans ready to adapt to the size of each seller's requirements. More details, Mark can help us with the rest of the puzzle.
Sure, thanks, Andy. You know, as you indicated, there are pre-engineered modules, and that's really the core of how we're approaching this. Each module provides a simplified approach to satisfy a specific area or a specific challenges to the companies trying to compete in the e-commerce world. And when you combine these different modules, then you have a comprehensive solution. So one can be tailor fit to the application with respect to size and as well as the needs. So for example, you know, maybe a company doesn't have enough space. And that's the case, then we start focusing on the facility acquisition portion of this puzzle here. Maybe they have an online presence, so then we focus on the shopping cart and bring that to the table. The really interesting thing about the way we're approaching this is it's designed to be flexible. So if a company has enough space and they do have an online presence, but their equipment can't support the operation, then we'll use the pieces that they currently have in place and then augment and supplement where those needs may be elsewhere in that puzzle. So today, though, what we want to focus on is paying special attention to how we can automate some of that process. And that's really through the use of gray-orange and their ability to provide a automated goods to picker solution as part of this. If we can advance to the next slide. Thanks. By introducing gray-orange, we can improve pick and put away productivity. We can reduce staff burden. We can even enhance the WMS operations and capabilities without really requiring a significant change to any existing WMS itself. So when we look at our solutions, a more traditional layout, for example, if we can go to the next slide, more traditional layout in developing a fulfillment center would incorporate maybe bin shelving, where we put the slower moving products, carton flow modules in there where we would put faster moving but still picked in less than case quantities, pallet flow for some of the fastest moving SKUs, and then of course a reserve rack on the far end of that layout. Now, if we take that traditional layout and now let's augment it to introduce automation and take advantage of some of the advanced technologies. So really what we would do is we'd look at the shelving component and the carton flow component and replace that with the gray-orange system as shown here. Aaron, maybe you can share a little bit more detail on how that would work.
Yeah, so Mark, basically, as you guys are going through and doing an analysis on what the needs of the customer are for the MHE, we've got a great range of products with our Ranger series, and one here specifically that can replace some of the more rigid bin shelving and the carton shelving is the Ranger goods to person. And so for folks who are not familiar, basically the premise is that we can utilize the power of the robotics and the AI machine learning driven platform to have the right products on the right racks and bring those racks to the picker. That saves us the labor of having them walk up and down aisles, especially in this COVID world, as we think about trying to keep people with a safe distance, social distancing apart from one another. We keep people kind of fixed in a single location, and all of the products that they need to pick throughout their day come to them. And we're showing here a rack setup that has a bunch of cubbies inside of it, typical to a bin shelving setup. But we can bring pallets, or we can bring full cases. It doesn't really matter to us. But the power of the system is this machine learning layer on top that's AI driven, which is managing not only the put away process. So we begin putting SKUs together on the same racks. But also how we group our orders at the pick put station. So that's the kind of interface back out to the human world, where we're going to open orders that have like SKUs together, so that we can get more picks each time those racks do come to the picker. So I mean, I think that gets us an overview of the overall system, driven by a gray matter, which is our WES layer, powered by the robots that are in the Ranger series. That gets the goods to a person. Mark, typically what happens from the goods to picker onwards?
Well, traditionally, we would most likely introduce a conveyor system that will take the picked orders from there. We'll use a sortation system to either direct them to pack stations, or if they're already packed, directing them to manifest lines. And then again, sorting at the dock doors, depending on shipping method and delivery. And part of the challenge of what we're trying to do with this program is, we're enhancing a company's ability to now compete in an e-commerce world where maybe they found that they were left behind before the COVID pandemic hit. And so, their ability to accurately forecast where they may be, it's the level of confidence they have in those numbers is going to dictate the level of confidence we have in equipment. And part of the challenge with that traditional conveyor and sortation solution is, what numbers do we trust? How much of a capital investment do they want to put forward? And nobody wants to find themselves with a shortfall in their system and can't handle the throughput, which means they got a great problem because they got more business than expected, but they still have to modify a fixed asset. And then by the same token, nobody wants to turn back and realize they overinvested more capital than they needed to, and now they're finding it difficult to justify the ROI.
Yeah, it's a good point, Mark. I think there's a lot of folks out there, and we'll use nice round numbers, who think they need, based on their projections, a 5,000 sorts per hour system, right? And they're trying to think of kind of a small to medium sized sortation system. And if they're wrong, they're either wrong high or wrong low, but they've purchased this fixed asset. And I think that's one of the things that we like about the Ranger Mobile Sort is, like most of the products that use this platform, is it's kind of a plan for tomorrow, buy for today scenario. So you don't need to make that 5-year out guess, because, I mean, can you imagine if folks made that guess prior to January of this year, kind of what their e-commerce business was going to be? Those people are pulling their hair out. Likewise, there's probably some folks who've seen a huge spike of e-commerce business that we hope, once things change a little bit, might level back out. So you don't want to over or under invest. So I think this type of flexible automation could make some sense for some folks as kind of a bolt on to both a traditional and this goods to person type system as you're going through your various puzzle pieces in the modules.
Yep.
I guess the last thing we focused on, and I think you brought it up already, Mark, was the ability to integrate into the WM. Some customers are going to come with a mature WM that already satisfies their needs, and the power of what we do with our gray matter is we have a set of kind of existing applications that can tuck up inside of an existing WM through some already proven integrations with the big boys in the networks, the high jumps, the SAPs, the Manhattans of the world. Even homegrown's not a problem. And like your puzzle pieces, we can kind of turn modules on and off inside of gray matter. Even the ability to interface and make a customized application for the customer. So say you're working, you brought up the fine folks at cannabis. Maybe they have some sort of metric that they need to understand growing cycles. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but the ability for our system to really interface to a new vertical or a new application is the power of what gray matter does. There's existing applications which, basically from door to door can manage the process flow or material flow through the system, and we can turn these on or off as we need. But we also can put another new application that's completely specific to the customer based on kind of already existing interfaces. So it's one of those things that, as you were talking about your WM, we can easily inject ourselves right into it. Or if you have folks that don't have a mature WM, gray matter can act as a large part, some of those traditional WM functionalities. I guess the last piece in there that we wanted to cover is that we've already not only have the applications built in place, but it's really about industry specific existing basically metrics that we've built the system around. We have existing applications, as I said, but not only that, but interfaces that are important. So for instance, let's take fashion as a key vertical for us. Gray matter is kind of tailored for those instances that handle high returns, right? And so there's other folks who don't care as much about returns, so, manufacturing sector, et cetera. But I think that our ability to kind of configure and form fit gray matter to each individual market that you guys are going to, and really attacks what their use cases and their specific needs and concerns. So Terry, we've got some extra minutes here at the end. We were quicker than we thought. Did we get any questions through the marketing chain?
Yeah, sure, Aaron. Here's one that will be a good discussion. Given everything you've talked about on efficient solutioning and rapid deployment and needing to think differently and not be caught off guard by the next COVID-20 or whatever other new curveball is coming our way, what's a typical lead time to be up and running?
Sandy, you and I were discussing this a little earlier. So do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. And the goal of eComplete, when we introduced eComplete just a matter of about 6 weeks ago, was to prepare our sellers, whether they're not in the online space today or whether they need to scale up to meet the growth and demand. We need to prepare them for the upcoming peak season. So as of right now, we can implement a solution and have our sellers prepared for the November peak season in some form or fashion. We also reserve, obviously, the opportunity then to look beyond the peak season at further automation and further improvement in a modular fashion as we move forward. So we can get you ready for peak season is the short answer. And then I know Gray Orange has been adapting their approach as well. You probably want to speak to that.
Yeah, so I think that as we all are trying to figure out not only changes for our customers, but changes inside of our business, we've thought of kind of 3 long poles in the tent, and to be able to make this a much more rapid deployment. One being the design stage of any project, and I think with the help of programs like eComplete, we're able to constrict that down to kind of these preset modules inside of these ongoing initiatives. The next is supply chain, and I know that our team has taken an internal initiative to kind of advance that so that we don't have longer lead times on material. I know that a lot of folks in the industry right now are suffering from longer lead times due to supply chain crunches and their own inability to get folks back into work and work on the MHE that's required to get these systems live. So that's something that we're tackling internally right now, trying to escalate that from that traditional 6 to 8 months down to that 3 to 6 months, depending on the ability to get stuff kind of front loaded into the system. And I guess the last piece is integral to how High Tech and Gray Orange works with our integrator partners is how do we reduce the delivery stage, right? So we talked about the design stage, we talked about the supply chain advancements we're working on, as well as how do we deliver these projects to the customers faster? What are ways that we can continue to kind of work together quicker, smoother? How can we build those interfaces inside of the WMS as we bring our gray matter system online? So that's really the challenge, the kind of threefold challenge that we are taking on right now to really reduce that down to something that's quite manageable. And more importantly to what we talked about, our customers don't have time. And so therefore we don't have time. And so all of us need to be thinking of ways to cut those weeks out of the overall design and build to something that we can deliver more turnkey and much faster space.
Okay, that's great. I actually have a couple of more questions here. One is, what's the main challenge in making the business case work? Usually, the picking operation will be more efficient, but what about replenishment and movement after pick pack, and how that changes and impacts the end-to-end process? So basically a business case question. What's the framework in which to think about these solutions from a ROI perspective?
I think this is a big impact of COVID-19. Yeah, the business case now is about keeping up with consumer demands. It's no longer about reducing labor or improving efficiency. Those are things that we need to do and need to include in the business case in order to meet our own performance objectives. But the reality is we have to meet the demands of today's customer and next year's customer, as we're seeing 30 and 50% growth rates. So the business case now is about sales and margin more so than it is about labor and ROI.
Yeah, it's a great answer, Stan. I think that one other thing that we've been running across, I'm sure you're the same way, is it used to be an ROI savings based on labor. But if they're missing out on business because of underperformance, it's equally penalty. You know, the penalty is the same for either of the two scenarios. It's not just we couldn't find people or we needed too many people. It's we missed business and that would hit our bottom line. So I think it's a good point you bring up.
Okay, great. And I have another question here. What is the kind of data? What kind of data would you need to be able to assess the size and scope and scale of our operation in order to put the right solution in place?
We have a very brief questionnaire. It's actually 2 pages, and it will require about 2 hours for a typical customer to complete and provide us with the data we need to, within a matter of 1 week, provide the scale and cost of the solution. So this is very different than what people are accustomed to in our world. Normally it's give us 6 weeks, we'll give you a proposal. By being very modular and being pre-engineered and pre-priced for that matter, pre-priced not only at the integrator level, but through our suppliers as well, we're able to provide a price and a layout using our e-completed process within 1 week now. So send us your data.
You know, we're right at 11 o'clock, but I maybe we can have a quick answer to this question because it's an interesting one. How does the role of a fulfillment manager change? Have you guys seen, post-COVID differences in how people think about managing fulfillment on a personal level?
Well, I know one thing that jumps out to me, and Aaron, we've talked about this in the past, is, and I mentioned it earlier, what happens when you have an individual test positive and what's required. And one of the things we talked about specific to Gray Orange is the way that system is set up. Your employees are positioned at each of the pick-put stations, and there's a record of every MSU that's been delivered to those specific stations. There's a record of the orders. So it's a lot easier to do that contact tracing, so to speak, if you do have an occurrence within that part of the environment. So some of that technology is going to be helpful for them, but it is a changing world. We've seen businesses that have tested positive and they shut down and all their employees get tested and they're down for at least a week, if not longer, depending on the requirements of each state. So it's a whole new paradigm for these guys.
Yeah. And I think that one of the big challenges, and I know we're running over a little bit, is that people are seeing peakish throughput numbers inside of their systems, which means more people. If we're talking about traditional walking through the aisles kind of technology, that's more people walking in confined spaces. That means even more contacts that would, you know, you have to trace through contact tracing. I mean, it's just it's managing the fulfillment center is changed, and I think that especially the goods to person, where we kind of keep people stationary, keep people separate from their coworkers, that allows us to have that kind of spacing, is a big advantage for folks when they're trying to manage their workforce. Not only do we need less folks because we're making efficiencies in their overall picking and their put away process, but also we're trying to keep those folks safer, which I think is hugely important to their management team.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And fulfillment managers will have to think ahead of the game now. We can no longer respond and be firefighters. We have to think about what could happen and have a plan for that as we look to tomorrow.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that we squeezed that question in, because some really great points there. But we are at 11:03, so thanks for joining us today for end-to-end fulfillment, new strategies for a new era. You see on this slide here that you have Aaron, Sandy, and Mark's contact information, so please feel free to reach out to them and continue the discussion, because there's lots of rethinking to be done. And also, there's a link to a e-complete focused webinar that's on. You see that under the address blocks there if you want to learn more about e-complete. And finally, keep an eye out for our email to receive a copy of today's presentation. And we really thank you for your time, and thank you, gentlemen, for the ideas and insights.